To our first discussion about mental health with Gareth Rutter and James Kirkup.
Hello, good morning.
Hi.
We've just been talking a little bit before, and everybody feels ever so slightly nervous about this. This is the first time we've talked about something this subject. We've very much been focusing on the industry and the work and the people, and now we want to sort of focus on topics that are, from a well-being perspective, so that everybody can, find a safe space just to sort of come together and explore these issues. It's also got the live chat is open, so if anybody wants to ask any questions, whether that's anonymously or just using your name, please do add them in, and we'll ask those throughout or at the end when we've got a bit of time. Just to get us going, guys, could you just give us an introduction to yourself and your work and what you guys do before we get talking about mental health? We'll start with you, Gareth, please.
Yeah, sure. I think my first business card from uni said "Jack of all trades, master of none." That's probably still the same thing. I suppose for 20 years, it's 20 years this year actually. I graduated from Brighton, and I've been started off as an art director for Nike and everyone else. Then kind of went into fashion and worked with Emma Gunn and Aquascutum, and then fell into brands just by complete accident, but loved it. And so I've been a brand designer for the last 17 years, and for the last 3 years I've been running my own gig, Bellow, which is like a micro agency, I suppose, where I collaborate with lots of different people, with James quite a few times as well. So that's me. Morning, everyone.
James, can you do the same for me, please?
Sure. Hello, I'm James. I'm a designer, graphic designer person, colouring in person. And a bit like Gareth, kind of spent about 10 years working in different agencies, design studios and whatnot. And then about 3 years ago, went out on my own and have just been doing that for the last 3 years now, which has rapidly vanished behind me.
I think we're all feeling the same. It's moving way too fast, isn't it? To get us going, I thought it might be quite helpful just to both of you to maybe give us an overview of your experiences with mental health and just sort of lead us through that timeline up until today, really. Yeah, so that we can get a bit of an idea of the bigger picture, if that's okay. Is that?
Oh, yeah, I'm happy to dive in first, being the Northern Gobshite. I think that as far as I'm aware, I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety when I was in my 30s. But having talked to a lot of therapists, going through them, I can trace it back to when I was 15, when I moved schools from Manchester to Devon. Some pretty awful stuff happened in that period, and that kind of set me off with this kind of a mindset where I'd grown up competitive swimming, so I used to training 17 hours a week with Stockport Metro. Did trumpet and music theory to really high orchestral standard. So I was really used to this kind of high pressure, kind of put everything into everything. And what I did at 15 was just because my family life was difficult at the same time. I just kind of started pushing all the stuff that was going wrong down and kind of presenting this facade of I'm loving this is great, and just not talking about any of the stuff that was going wrong or that I was feeling. And I think that over time, it was much easier just to present this facade, a version of me that other people wanted to see. That I could easily construct, and I just sit behind that, and it gave me a bit of an air gap between me sitting it terrified and epically sad about pretty much everything. I just stopped people asking me stuff. It was really easy. There's a great lyric by a band called Palace, which is I wear a mask. It's shaped like a grin. It's a really good example of how people deflect what's going on with them. And I did that for years and years and years and years and years until my mid-30s. I went to go and do a shoot in South Africa. It was supposed to be the shoot of a lifetime. It was epic. And I came back and I completely just fucking fell apart. I completely unspooled. Just all the stuff I pushed down just spilled out like some big toxic sludge. And I just couldn't deal with it. I think I sat in bed for 2 weeks. I couldn't stop crying. Didn't know what I was doing anymore. And I went back to my parents and tried to kill myself twice. Looked into this like it's just empty void. I was a husk by that point. I'd my last job, they made me redundant in a pool of one whilst medically signed off, which is a pretty bad thing to do, I think, from a sort of a design industry perspective. And I went back to my parents, and you know, they helped me put myself back together, which took a long time. And but you know, I think I didn't want to do it till then. I didn't want to go into therapy. I didn't want to do anything. And I think you have to get to a point where something. The reason I talk about it and why I think this is important is that I don't want anyone to get to that point, to look into that dark morass, that kind of go from more of nothingness. You know, not to feel like that husk, because it makes you feel like a husk. There's just nothing left. You've spent all your energy and all your time, you know, fighting yourself. And you know, and you know, my 20s and 30s would have been very different if I'd been diagnosed better, if I'd talked about it more with my mates, because one of my mates were horrified. I hadn't told them. They were bereft, because like we were really good mates, and I just didn't tell anyone because I just didn't know how to talk about it. So I think that the important thing to take out of this is from my perspective anyway, just as a sort of starter, is that it's really just important to start. That's why I love Talk Club. All these things where I get people to talk about their feelings is so fucking important, because it's the thing. It's the difference between your life and death. Yeah. You know, it took me a long time to get back to it, but there's a lot of therapy. It took me ages to find the right therapist. So I hate most of them. I used to run rings around them because I thought it was fucking boring and really stupid, and just like I played like a game. And I found one lady who had loads of crystals, like was in Tavistock, where I went to school in Devon. And she was just great. She was really honest, and we just clicked. And it took a while to find someone that I could like open up with. And I just unloaded the stuff I hadn't talked to anyone about since I was 15. And although that was horrifically painful and really, really horrible, I don't really want to go back there again. But it was really helpful just to kind of let that go. And everything kind of got better after that. I mean, it's not like fucking unicorns and rainbows now. It's like, you know, it's still like mental health is hard work. You know, I'm kind of at the moment looking at a new. I've got to bring up the medical term for it. So give me a second. But there is a state that isn't manic depression, isn't ADHD, but it's not depression or anxiety either. There's another thing that sits in between it. I found out by listening to a really good BBC podcast series about mental health. There was a guy who let me find it. I texted someone about it last night. Just be 1 second. So it is called cyclothymia. Apparently, it's psychothermic disorder. It's a mental and behavioural disorder that involves numerous periods of symptoms of depression and periods of symptoms of elevated mood. So I can rock from like being like mental, like, and my mental, I'm like, you know, very excited, very into it, to fuck this, and you know, basically all my meds do is kind of smooth out that transition. But I think as I've got older, my meds haven't worked as well with that. So it's just fine. So that's me in a nutshell, basically. I'm still trying to find the right way, still chatting to people, still have the same therapist that I see, you know, that I see twice a month. You know, I think there's nothing like being in a room with someone who doesn't judge you, and you can ask all the questions that people ask on the internet. Like, you know, the lady yesterday asking about whether it's weird to say her boyfriend to talk about Pringles, like Pringles, and you know, there's this whole discussion on the internet about, am I the arsehole? It's just nice to have someone to say, am I being a dick by thinking this, or am I building a false narrative in my own head about this? Because I memean, I played chess when I was younger. I definitely build like 8 different false narratives at the same time, because that's just the way my brain works. You know, I'm constantly, and it's that kind of, so my whole mental health journey has been about telling my brain to shut the fuck up, and trying to just get more focused, because I you know, focus is not something that I possess very much of, which is great when you create ideas. It's great being a designer, but it's absolutely useful trying to be an adult.
So, but when I'm really interested in the transition when you came into creative industries, then. So obviously it was from a lot earlier age that you were putting up that front.
Yeah.
Within the industry that sort of beats its chest quite heavily on, you know, perfection, being the best quality. It's always about sort of, I think it disregards maybe the people behind a lot of the work and puts the work, in front of the people. Was that a catalyst? Even, does that drive?
Oh man, my brain that was like, do well, people like you, right? Was like, yes, you can stand in front of people and they'll big you up. They'll make you feel great. But then it's so being a designer is like constantly building your own platform and then asking people to destroy it.
Yeah.
Basically, you build something really nice and then you actively ask your peers or people you don't know to rip it apart. It's a really, really, really odd business because the hard thing is it's a classic thing around mental health. It's much easier to build something and take it apart yourself, like self-sabotage stuff, because it's much easier to do that because there's the defined outcome. It's much harder to build something and leave it and hope that it stands up because there's not a defined output to that. I think that's the thing. I think that in design is really it's hard. You're constantly putting yourself out there. We were talking about this just before we got on. Like the design industry is almost like when you were a junior, it's like the Hunger Games. It's like, I want to become a middleweight. Fuck it, I have to be better than this one. And rather than being like a culture of like, yeah, let's all work together. A lot of the agencies I worked in were like you were pitted against people, not like in some kind of not kind of like duel to the death, but you were always reviews. We talked about other people, and it'd be like I came into the design industry at the fag end of the 90s, where you go to a pub on Friday and you won't come back. Like on Friday, and the culture was drink, and besides the kind of like the culture of perfectionism, there's the culture. I used to get myself blind drunk. I just hated everything about my life. And there's that kind of like real tipping point of like work really, really hard, work really, really hard. Like when I was in my 20s, I could work all night, sleep under my desk, and go out and get absolutely hammered the night after, and I'd be fine the next day. And if I did that now, I think I would literally have to shed my own skin. I wouldn't want to, but I think you get to the point where I certainly found anyway that pressure of being perfect, and it's unattainable as well. I think one of the best things I ever heard from a therapist was when I've got two kids. Oliver and my two kids are 10 and 8, and son and daughter. And when I first came out of therapy, I first came out of my own head. One of the things the therapist said to me was 80% of you constantly want 100% of the access to your kids. It's not going to happen, and all you're doing is you're giving yourself unreasonable goals. Like I was a past master at making my life a living hell. Like I would put like completely unreasonable stuff. I need to be better than that senior. I need to win awards. All that stuff, all the bullshit basically that surrounds the design industry. The performative crap, the stuff that once you once me realize doesn't mean fucking all anyway. I think that understanding that you can get stuff right 80% of the time, and that's a really, really high percentage, is one of the most freeing things you can hear in your life. Certainly for me, anyway. I think that kind of background of perfectionism and kind of working hard, like certainly like 17 hours a week swimming, fucking brutal. But taking that mindset in, it's like good, but also really toxic. And I think that it comes from permission from people you work with and getting really clear expectations of what you're supposed to be doing. Like I worked on a pitch. I think my first big pitch I worked on was 36 hours straight. And I just think that's a completely unreasonable thing to make anyone do.
But what do you think that those cultures exist? I just don't understand that so many people have sort of negative opinions of awards or long pitches or fighting against other people or doing work for free, but so many people still do it. I don't understand why these cultures aren't being.
So the whole design industry, right? We're the most we're supposedly the most inclusive, amazing kind of I was chatting to someone on Twitter about this last night. We talk a fucking great talk about inclusivity, about how we give people access and everything else. And there's a great thing that I think Creative Boom were talking about the other day. I can't remember it, so I'm really sorry to the company. But there's a company that giving access to homeless people into design. like it's another route into design, because one of the biggest things in design is like gatekeeping, like financial gatekeeping or geographic gatekeeping. Like, you must come to London. Bollocks to that. You know, like I think like we have this kind of like assumed structure, like archaic structure of you must come to London, you must, you know, schlep around for doing some kind of circuit of stuff, you must do this for free, you know, and I just think we talk a great talk about how we're like the most exciting bunch of interesting people. Why the fuck are we doing the same stuff 20 years later? You know, it's really odd. We talk about being really progressive, but we're not. We've still got legacy structures of how agencies exist. You know, I think you know, being like upper middle class cis white male, I had the easiest ticket into design, right? When I graduated, I went to stay with like my parents' friends was head of HSBC Europe, right? So like, you know, piss easy, right? And it's my job, everyone in my bracket's job, to make sure everyone has an easy ride. And it's that kind of, we have to, essentially, it's like myself, James, everyone else, we should be building agencies that change how people access it, how people get to it. I think that's where you get change. I'm not going to ask, you know, Pentagram to change how they do stuff, and I'm not balling them out either. I just think that there are lots of ways that design happens. Are they the best way for design? So that's a much bigger kind of topic. But
no, interesting. James, is it possible for you to do the same, please, just to talk us through your experience from where it stems from, and, you know, just that timeline up until
sure. I'm very nervous to talk about this. I don't know why. I guess my journey is a lot maybe calmer than Gareth's example, in terms of probably up until I was about 29. I'm 34 now, I think. I was all right. Like, never had any issues with work or outside of work. And then, around 29, 30, started having panic attacks. And I didn't really know the cause of them. And I also just put them in a box and locked the box and used work as a hiding place. But then slowly but surely, and without, I mean, this is all in hindsight now, it really started to kind of affect my confidence in work. And I think I just went into myself again. And I think, I just I didn't enjoy the pressures that were put on you, whether that's to deliver something or to present something, or I just had like zero confidence because I was so scared that I was going to go into this state of panic. But I never dealt with it. I just kind of pushed on and tried to forget about it and thought, that will go away. And it's only recently, kind of 5 years later, that I've started to kind of deal with it in a more confident way, doing a bit of therapy, talking about it more, having more discussions with other people, being a bit more vocal on Twitter and whatnot about certain things, but still, occasionally struggle with it, and occasionally I'm absolutely fine. Right now I'm a shivering mess behind this stoop.
I think my hands are like going like that. My heart like being like that. And but so I was doing this. I was doing all right. Work was going quite well, but I was certainly kind of suffering silently. And then I'd always wanted to kind of do my own thing, work on my own, try and start my own business. And actually, I've found doing that has helped me massively. And I'm like, I still get nervous before I speak to new people or present stuff or have to go into a room on my own and you know, talk to a company about what they should be doing. You know, the confidence levels I'd struggle with for sure, but I actually find I'm more capable of owning them, doing what I do now,
than when I was in a kind of bigger studio environment. And I think going back to that topic of like working late nights and long shifts and all of those things that a lot of people who have worked for 10 plus years have definitely experienced at some point. I think I found that, and again, in hindsight, that actually most of the time those things happen because of kind of chaos structure and really badly organized people who are then getting you to do the task. It's not necessarily the people that have to do the task that is why they're working late. Sometimes it is, but I think I found that, by getting away from those structures, you can actually relieve yourself of all of that chaos.
I think it's also because you've got control as well, isn't it? I think that, I think it's that, like, because you can plan it out. You can kind of, like, you're doing the theme tune, singing the theme tune, promoting the theme tune, right? But,
you can see like the immediate, and you can see kind of the future. You can map things out, and I think in the studio structure environment, a lot of that is hidden from designers. Designers are there to color stuff in. They're not there to understand the bigger picture, the roadmap, the costs that are involved, the reason why this pitch is so important for the business. Like, that's never really spoken about because you're not supposed to be involved. And I think in one of the places I worked, I really wanted to get more involved in that, and the opportunity wasn't there. And I think that's when I was like, right, this is time to go and try and own this myself.
I will say on the flip side to that, when I was in a position of being creative director in like agencies in New York and London, that being in that position where they tell you what the pressures are is actually just as bad. It's like, you're like, we've got to win this one, have we? What, really? Like, we're fucked, we go? Great. And then you're like, oh my fucking, like extra pressure on top. So you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. I think that it's difficult because all the pressures are there. I think it's how you deal with that pressure. And for me, I just used to go into work and cry for like half an hour before everyone got in, because I need to just like let it out somehow. I think the pressure is always there. It's also, if you're putting it on yourself, like you're saying, I think it's a really heady mix, because no one's gonna dig you out more than yourself. No one can make you feel worse than yourself. Because you're like that constant battle is there. Sorry.
I think that idea of what James was saying then about going solo, if it's freelance or starting your own business, that idea of control for me when I did it wasn't just about controlling the client or the project, it was the ability to control my life better, I found. So I could take
100%.
Take my daughter to school, I could pick her up, I could go clear off for half a day if I needed to. And that physically and mentally, that was such a relief, instead of just being chained to that 9 to 5 thing. And I just lost the plot after 20 years of doing that.
I think also like, if you're a freelancer, like certainly for me, like when I came back from sort of breakdown stuff, I spent 6 months freelancing around London. And when you freelance, people keep hiring you if you're good. It's quite a nice little thing just to have that kind of, am I doing well? Am I doing, that kind of, it's very hard to leave that mindset behind. Freelancing can be quite a nice thing, because it's just, it minus the bullshit. It's like, I'm leaving this office at 5, like, unless you'll pay me more money. See ya. And it's not because I don't give a shit. It's just I don't give a shit. It's not, I don't have to like kill myself for this. Because what I realized was I kill myself for lots of other people. And one of the reasons why I wanted to do my thing was because if I'm going to kill myself, I might as well do it for myself. And like, I think the whole thing of like balancing it more. Like, I do 4 days a week. I probably do 3 hours a day work and 4 hours a day dicking around on the internet. And I think that because my brain doesn't focus. So, but I'll have 3 hours and I'll do a ton of solid work within that 7 hours. And just understanding that actually I can compartmentalize my day. I can go mountain bike. I can go and I can cook and go out and like have a really nice lunch. Those sort of things that add texture to your life are really important. Otherwise, you're just in the same drudgery with the same things. Like the Einstein quote is, the definition of madness is doing the same thing, expecting different results. Just the ability to change how you live and how you work, I think is one of the most empowering things that if you're lucky enough to do it, is really great.
Yeah. I said to quite a few people recently asked me about, it's just constantly questions about the industry and jobs and stuff. I say, stop being so focused on defining your life by, what your job, your life is far more important than, just that role that you make a bit of money out of.
But it takes a while to realize that, right?
Yeah.
Like when you start out, it's all about getting good. And like Gareth said, a bit of that kind of Hunger Games gameplay going on maybe at the beginning. And then you maybe move around and then you start to kind of map out a bit of a like career where you're like, okay, I'm gonna go for that, or I want to work there, or I want to do this. And then you kind of get to that point, and it may be speaking from like privilege of being able to get to that point, you then kind of realize this isn't that great. And like I'm working all these hours, or there's a demand to do that. And actually it's not necessarily worth it for some people. For other people, they love it, and that's wicked, and that's really great, and they're happy. But for a small group of people, it doesn't work so well. And this format that does work.
I think the big thing is that in UK education, we're taught to choose lots of stuff really early. Like at 16, you're asked to choose from GCSEs. You've got a fucking clue what you're doing. And then these like A levels, like, right, where are you going to university? What are you doing with your life? And it's like you're 19, like, I don't fucking know. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. And I was lucky that I was doing advanced maths, chemistry and physics A levels, because I thought that my parents wanted me to be a doctor. And I left that to go to art school. But look, to James's point, it takes ages to work out what you are and who you are and what sort of designer you are. Like one of the best things for me was realizing that I'm actually not that good a designer. I worked with I freelance with people like design students and stuff like that, and literally those kids will wipe the floor with me. Like, I want to make something look cool. Yeah, fine. My skill is in strategic thinking, is in thinking about how an idea can process, and using the way that my mind works to like spill out a ton of like, here's what happens if you do this with a design, and be able to see that in real time. Like kind of my brain works at that kind of like speed, and that's my kind of like design superpower. It's not someone else's. And I think a lot of the time you look at people and you think, I want to be like them. I want to be like Marina Weir. I want to be like, like I want to be like all these great people. And what you don't realize is that behind them, there's other people doing that work, and like you can't do everything, and sometimes it's just good enough just to be you, who you are, and be really happy in that and confident. Because I think, certainly from talking to James separately for this, I can't sell an idea that I'm not confident in. Like I'm not someone who goes on The Apprentice. I can stand in front of people and like wheel shit out. But if I don't believe in it, if I don't really think it's good, I'm shit. So the most important thing to me is to be honest with myself. I'm at work and be like, I think this is really good, and that, I think to me again that lessens the pressure, because you're not just shilling some shit. You're saying something that you really believe in, and that you've spent years kind of cogitating around like what works for you. And I think that kind of there's a pressure coming out of uni. I see all the kids come out with. I didn't even come out with a website. I had postcards. You see kids are coming out with this fucking amazing work, right? This is great. You've got all these kind of like mock-ups and everything else. But what's lost behind that is that everyone wants to be really good straight away. There's this desire to be like, I'm fucking there. So kids come out and they're like, I'm a creative director. That's great. Like, if that's your vibe, that's totally fine. I'm an old dog, so I don't know what to say about it. But I think that there is, like, uni is a great place to fuck up and for it to mean nothing. Your early years in design should be something where you slowly work out who you are and grow into yourself. There's a great Ira Glass quote about finding who you want to be and growing into that. And it's on my LinkedIn somewhere. I'll post it into a chat here or something on my line. But it's about, it takes ages to find who you are and your craft, your sense of style. And it's frustrating when you're younger because you want it to happen straight away. But you can't force that stuff. Some people just like, and one of the biggest things for me was when I was a junior designer was I found everything really hard. Mainly because I told myself I was shit all the time. and also because I've worked with some really good people, and I was never going to be as good as them. But that's the wrong way to look at it. Is that it should be about what am I bringing to the table, not am I as good as them. I think it's that shift in mindset. It's really hard when you're younger because you just want to be good. You like pressure. You've got a job. It's starting to pay some half decent money. You want to go find that other job. And there's this constant sort of like treadmill, like almost like like a gladiator to my age now, the travelator. And you have to run up it, and people fall down because they're knackered, and it's really hard. Like it's a constant running mill of like trying, like, am I going to the right conference? Am I using the right typeface? Am I doing all this stuff? And I think that once you step like half a step back and realize that everyone is just as fucking terrified as you.
And no one knows what typeface
it's the best thing. It's like, look, you go to when you go to antenatal classes, and everyone sits there and everyone's like putting on a brave face, and then they go, someone brings out like, I don't know, so much, and everyone's like everyone relaxes a bit because everyone realizes that no one knows anything. I think that kind of honesty of like, you can't know everything when you come out of uni. How could you? Yeah. I don't know everything now. Yeah. There's an anti-Bourdain quote, which is like, the rest of the final resting place of the mind is in the fact that you don't know everything, that you're not some omnipotent kind of power, that you are. Your smallness in the universe is actually a superpower. Your want to find out more is the most exciting thing as a designer. To want to keep doing new shit, like James and I just did a like a crypto Web3 project. I still kind of don't understand it because it's a really weird project. But I love that about design. Is you can learn so much, and I think that just that desire to not know everything. And to grow into yourself as a designer, I think at a decent pace is something that should be really promoted. I think as a junior, it just means you're just less pressure on yourself. Sorry, I'm yappering away now. So
that's perfectly fine. I think going back to what James was saying originally, I think also with that finding yourself by doing it yourself, there are so many ways that we can now work in this industry. You can be studio in-house, work freelance, you can work in niche industries and disciplines and all those sorts of things. So it's about finding your place, isn't it? And like you say, it takes a long time. But fair enough, I think mine was the reverse of what you just said, Gareth. I think when I went in, I was all cocky and fearless. And it's when I then went up the ladder, I became like the nervous, sort of one.
Yeah.
I had to control people. I was like, why would they want to listen to me? I can't teach them anything. It's just it's about having confidence in yourself. And I just want to go back to, if everybody that's watching, please drop any questions in if you've got, or any comments in general. Just as we run through this, we can ask them to the guys at the end. We've got a few spare minutes. Something I just wanted to talk to you both about is that I know you're both very active on Twitter, especially.
Uh-oh.
I've dug something up from 2013. Do you find that as some sort of form of therapy, or is it a release? Is it what drives that? And that's to both of you. Sorry, that with Gareth.
You go first.
A little bit. Yeah, I think there is something like, it's a chicken and egg, isn't it? Because like Gareth said earlier, when you're putting yourself out there like that, there's always the chance that you can get kind of shot down and you can get into trouble quite quickly on those things, like any form of social media. And I think there's a really interesting thing that I always find about the design industry, where like it's almost like we're all trying to become famous for some reason. Like, what is that about? But all we're doing is we're promoting our work, right? So we can get more work, or other people can see that we're good or not good, or whatever we're trying to do on there. But you've got a kind of like, I don't know, I try and like keep a bit of stupidity on there, like I'll tweet like absolute nonsense. I don't try to be too serious on it, but it is probably, going back to your question, a little form of like a diary, a therapy diary of me just splurting absolute nonsense.
Same thing. I think mine's like a feed of like food, trainers, the things that I like around I'm more interested in being infamous. Infamy. They've all got infamy. I think there's this idea of like this sense of, I don't know. I try and put like positive vibes. I will, but then there are things that just kind of I look at and I just think, fuck, why are we conforming to those standards? Why are we doing this? So I will say, and I've like going back to you, Chris. I was an absolute cocky wanker when I was a junior. But obviously it was a great facade to hide the sort of like like a pangolin. You sort of like the hard exterior of being really cocky hides the soft interior where you're like, fuck, I don't know what I'm doing. So I think there's a bit of that to it. But I think that I think I've probably not done my career any favors by being really honest and just saying things. So I think I think like everything, there are ways to approach like things, right? And I've probably just been a bit more brusque, a bit more honest than I probably should have been, about certain things. But that's just who I am. And I'm sure, like within that, I probably rub people up the wrong way, and I don't do it because I want to rub them up the wrong way. I just think that it's the grit in the oyster that makes the pearl. Like that's the way I look at how I run my agency. Is the agitation, doing something slightly different is where you get the great stuff, like where you work with other people. So my Twitter feed is more like a great hive mind. I follow some really fucking intelligent people who are way more like just like galaxy brains, who I'm just like infused by what they do. And I follow people who just shitpost, and I like that. I like this. Like, my whole thing is like high culture and low culture. I hate the middle. Middle's fucking boring. So I have like really dumb stuff and really fucking intelligent stuff, and that's what makes my mind and my heart like sing. And I think that's
now
what
I know why you don't follow me, Gareth.
What's that?
Now I know why you don't follow me. What the hell?
Well, I probably remember. I think that there is I think social media for me, you can see it as like, that's why I don't really do Instagram, because I hate the postulation of it. I hate the kind of like, this kind of like performative bullshit. But obviously, it works really well. I know that James gets those work out of it. I think I'm just older and like more along the tooth. But I think it's like finding your niche. I love Twitter because it's words, and I think because it's dumb. I think that what you see on social media is the worst type of discourse. And it's like, where we've gone politically, we've gone socially, everywhere else, it's like black and white. I'm right. No, like, could we both be right? Or could we both be wrong? It's like, I'm fucking right, I'm wrong. And every discussion becomes very black and white. And what we've lost in politics, societally, is the ability to see the other person's side and go, well, maybe, the cleverest people I know can have their minds changed, will accept that they might be wrong. The cleverest people aren't the people who are always saying they're right. They're fucking charlatans. I think that it's just impossible to be that. I think that, and what we lack, especially in design discourse, is like, oh, it looks shit, and it's like, okay, fine, but you don't really know the context of it. But it's like, hey, everyone will jump in on something. I've done it too. When I see something I think is someone spent 2 years doing, and I think it looks like an absolute like dog's dinner, then I probably will say that. But not because I think that the agency is crap, and not because I want to make anyone feel bad. I just think that as an industry, if you're saying something takes some time, money, and everything else, and the output is something that looks a bit like, okay, it's like, well, that's what people perceive. The design industry taken through, like, if you extrapolate that out of social media, what you tend to get in media is how much something costs. So like BP, it costs money and stuff like that. And I think that we have a duty to our industry, like through how we promote stuff and everything else, especially on social media, just to make it look like people get good value, as well as and great work and great discourse and stuff. I just think that we could be better at those sorts of things. But then social media means nothing anyway. So, yeah.
But the reason I asked about the social media thing is that for me, I find it more detrimental than being in therapy. As soon as I go on, so I immediately feel mentally in a worse place. I don't really understand why. And that was what I think I was getting at, because you guys use it quite frequently, especially Twitter, like I said. Has that ever caused more of a downturn as opposed to it being a positive?
I think you can, like same thing like saying about measuring yourself against people. I think right. I think that you see a lot of stuff, and it's the thing. You see lots of people who create stuff, and you're kind of like, am I doing as much as them? Am I doing as much work as them? Why have I not been featured on the brand identity? All those sorts of things. And I think the biggest thing is, I worked in an agency who were all ex-partners people, and was I think my fourth agency. And a lot of the time, like two of the partners really worried about what the other people that who were their peers were doing in their agencies. And if you spend all your time looking to the side, you're not going to go forward very quickly. I think it's social media can be something where you can use it as a tool to beat yourself with. Like, you're not doing what these people are doing, you're not doing as much. But I think it's just like all social media, it's a distorted reality. It's a distorted vision of something, because you're only being presented with like 160 characters and a couple of images, and I think that like just not. I found that just doing social media less and worrying less about what other people are doing and just being really confident in the work that I'm doing is a much healthier way to do it, rather than just like, so as I said, I use it more as a research tool and just to ask around, because I think that is, for me, that's the benefit of it. But I think I don't know about you, James, but I think that if I spent too much time on it, I'd probably just like start to worry that wasn't as good as I'm never going to build something like James at Koto. I'm happy with that, because I don't want that, but I think I'm really glad that they exist, because they're brilliant. I think there's all this space for all these things to happen. I think if you're less confident about yourself, social media can be something that becomes like a sort of like a sufferfest, where you just see lots of people doing great work or purporting to do great work, because it's a bit difficult to understand what's real and what's not. And I think that losing reality is quite a common mental health thing as well. Like constructing either a false narrative for yourself or thinking that you're doing worse than other people.
Yeah, that ties in with the question that we just had here. Maybe James, you could answer this, because it's regarding confidence, and that was part of your, when you went solo, that was part of that journey, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Just mentioned about breaking that cycle of the lack of confidence and imposter syndrome, and really finding the enjoyment in design. Is it? I suppose I know a lot of these sort of questions aren't really one sort of size fits all, but from your perspective, have you ever had that where you needed to break the lack of confidence to sort of to have the ability to start your own business? I mean, that takes putting yourself out there, right in the centre, aren't you? It's you. Everything is on your shoulders. They say the confidence to do that, to continue finding clients, to build the creativity that people want to pay you for.
You've got to enjoy it in the first place. Like if you don't enjoy it, like don't do it. But I think personally, the imposter syndrome thing for me, I just use it as like inspiration. I'm like, sweet, these guys are making something amazing. I want to be able to meet that aesthetic, or like meet those standards, or the next time I do something, I'm gonna lay out something like that or do something in that way. I think you've got to change the narrative from like, oh my god, those guys or that group of people are doing something I'll never be able to achieve, to all right, sweet, next time I'm going to try and get that into what I'm doing, or like use it as a positive. But I think in terms of the confidence of like the running a business side of things, I'm not trying to achieve anything of any like huge size. I don't look at other studios and go, oh my god, I need like 20 people, I need a studio space, I want these clients. I don't look at anything like that. And also the going back to the social media stuff slightly, I personally love kind of putting out work. Sometimes I regret putting some stuff up because I don't love it like the next day, and sometimes I'm quite proud of it. But again, I couldn't care less if it gets 10 likes or 1,000 likes. And the feature stuff as well, like, again, I stopped doing that for quite a while, or I didn't try to do it for quite a while. And then when I did, I got a bit of work out of it. So then I thought, well, you know what, maybe this is actually worth kind of pursuing. And if something comes from it, then it's worth it. But I'm certainly not trying to become anyone here, says this guy that's doing a talk to the design industry. But you know what I mean.
That's it, isn't it? So you've run the gauntlet, brand new, arguably the worst kind of like arena with the most ridiculous comments. You know, like people, I like the most ridiculous. Like, I fixed your design. Cheers, mate.
Yeah.
You know, like,
I mean,
like that kind of weirdness. I think is, yeah.
But you know, the last place I worked at, I kind of got in at the tail end of when they were rebranding Camden Town Brewery.
Yeah.
And that went up on brand new, and someone had posted the Panda Express logo and was like, you know, this is better than what you've come up with. And you know, that shit can like really offend some people, but most people, I think, just kind of laugh at it and be like, "That's just hilarious."
It's tough, isn't it? It is literally like I think a lot. I think it depends on your. I think it depends on your mindset. I think on some days, if someone, and it's probably why I don't put any work up on those sites, because I think some days I could take that and laugh it off, and some days I'd be like, "Fuck this! I'm going to close my business." I think it really depends on like how you feel. But I think the big thing is like I'm the happiest I've ever been as a designer now, because I do work that I like. I don't work with clients I think are dicks. That's the only rule I have for Bellow is no dickheads. Like, you know, and I think that having that ownership of who your clients are, having a better, more deep relationship with them, has allowed me to do better work. And I think that's kind of on the imposter syndrome thing. I don't know, because I was, you know, I all I know is that every time I go and present to people, whether it's one person or when I present it to like 500 people in a simulcast to like 2 different like time zones, I'm always shitting it. Always. That fear of like presenting something never goes. I feel sick. I have to like do breathing exercises. I have to like pump my fist underneath the table, you know, just to kind of do it. But once I start doing it, it's fine. I think it's that like everything. Like when you have going back to James' point about panic attacks, my point was that. So panic attack happens because you've got your lizard brain and your human brain, right? And I read this really good book just explain this to me, that when you have a panic attack, the bridge between those 2 different parts of your brain disappears, and basically the lizard brain, which is your fight and flight thing, takes over. And so by that point, someone could like say the most rational thing to do anything, but you aren't gonna fucking listen, and you're gonna lose it. I think understanding that's how your body works. I found like reading a lot of like stuff around why I had panic attacks and other stuff made me feel a lot more comfortable about it. And I think that the panic attack stuff happened when I couldn't really reason with myself, and that was always the thing before presentations or like the night before. I piss agencies off because I can't come in today, because I built it up into being something that was like inachievable. And I think that imposter syndrome can happen to be. I think that it's wrapped up in lots of other things. I think that the definition of it is a weird kind of thing. So I actually think it's like it's probably part of other kind of symptoms. But I think that, you know, the question about navigating and avoiding burnout. I mean, I did burn out, and I think that's because I was chasing that an inescapable, like a dream that I'd never get. You know, when I won loads of Transform Awards and built a team of people from scratch in a year, but I almost lost everything for it, and nothing's worth that. Like, it's just fucking graphic design. You know, it's just not like, you know, just in the same thing that it's not serious that people talk about it. It's just like, if you love your job and you enjoy it, because like I'm really lucky to, I don't swing my legs out of day out of bed every day and go fucking graphic design, yeah. But I do love what I do still 20 years later, and I found a way for me, a construct for me to love it in. And I think one of the most important things is if you love something, you're not going to try and break it. So if you're honest with yourself about where you want to be and everything else, then that's one of the best ways to avoid burnout. It's just to not feel like you need to chase inescapable dreams, that you find something that you want to do and you go for it. And it's also fine, you know, like this idea, you know, everyone there's a big kind of like, you know, LinkedIn is one of the worst places to ferment kind of like absolutely bullshit opinions. But like, you know, this whole idea about failing and everything else. Failure is awful, and burnout's awful, and all these things are awful. You know, the biggest thing is just to maybe like every once in a while take a step back and just think, am I happy? Is this making my life better or worse? Is it adding something, or is it taking something away? And if it's taking something away, then that's an unhealthy thing, whatever industry you're in.
But my experience, which is really strange, what you say then about, you know, realizing it is just graphic design and being happy and finding the clients you want and working on good stuff and not with dickheads, is that I had to go through all of those things, like to realise that, which you don't wish on anybody. Like I said, imposter syndrome, mental health, then burnout. I mean, that was the worst one for me. Literally 2 weeks in the dark room, didn't get out off the sofa.
Yeah.
It was. But if I hadn't gone through that, I think I would have just trundled along, doing the same old crap. It's because I did that, and made me actually, in hindsight, reflect on it and change it, and that was godsend, I think, in the weirdest way.
I generally think that every single person in the world could benefit from a bit of therapy. Or at least being honest with themselves about where they are. There is nothing more, even if it's just chatting to a mate, just saying, look, or just like you text someone and say, look, I'm not happy, this isn't working for me. Like just being, but if we were just like, a tiny little bit more honest with ourselves and less kind of like worried about what other people would think if you're just honest, I think we'd move forward societally in lots of different ways, because it's just it's really hard to stick yourself out there and say, look, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm tired. I'm sad all the time. I fucking hate this shit. It's really hard to admit that, because it's you've created that. It's something that you have fostered in some way. It might be everyone's learns from their environment, but I think that's the thing, and that goes back to if you're an agency owner, then fostering the right kind of attitude for people. So from a mental health, I've had two very different experiences. One agency, as I said before, got rid of me in a pool of one whilst I was medically signed off for depression, and another one when I felt like I was really fucking up and struggling on like two massive jobs. They were just like, look, how can we make this better for you? How can we make you feel more comfortable so you don't get to this point where you feel like you've got to jump off a cliff? And please, for the fucking love of God, can everyone do that option? Because I think that like having I know that WPP have something around where they teach people about mental health, and I think that one of the biggest things in the industry is the lack of understanding, empathy. There's this thing of like, if I broke my leg, no one would fucking question anything. If I have like a massive depressive episode, that's gonna hamstring me as much. But we don't have that level of understanding, and that shouldn't be coming from people in the industry who have mental health doing that. It should be agency owners wanting to seek out that and understanding what it is. It's not like going one way or the other. It should there are no I'm part of a union for design and advertising, and one of the things is that there's no like mental health charter specifically like for what should we do and what should we do, what shouldn't we do. How should we handle people? Like everyone has their own way of handling it. But if there was some kind of way of people understanding, I think again that would help a lot of people. Like every time I've talked to people and said I suffer from this, guaranteed that one or two people will come up afterwards and say, can I chat to you about that? And I just like normalizing this shit. Like life's hard. It's not always fun. But you shouldn't feel like you're existing. You feel like you're living. And I think that's the thing, is that like little bit of support. Like we're a massive industry of on the whole pretty fucking awesome people. And I think that just a little bit more empathy, a little bit more kind of care, a little bit more, are you all right? I think would make a massive change to just how we approach it, and it's not just like design, being fucking humans as well. I think like just that a bit more empathy is important.
100%. I also think that having these conversations with everybody, but especially at that junior role, and it then becomes integrated into sort of the industry. It's a continual conversation that's always had, and it's not. The worst thing I can think for us to do is just to have this and never do it again. So the idea of doing it every week, every month, however much it is, and doing it in real life as well, and actually celebrating what this is all about, and not just sort of sticking it under the sofa and hiding it away.
I think there's an industry-wide problem, like diversity, like everything else. Like let's be like, there's lots of performative shit. Right? Hey, we've hired people. And then it's like, yeah, we'll get it, like just fuck them. Like there's all these things. It goes back to my point before. Like we sell like diversity and inclusivity to clients. We're just an industry, we're not very good at it. And that's neurodiversity as well as like whatever you you pronounce yourself as and everything else. I think all that shit's important. You know, I think that there just needs to be more work to be more to be just like a little bit of a soup, some more accepting of people. And I think it would open up the industry to more people. I think some of the most intelligent people I know are batshit mental, like just quite, you know, can be quite difficult characters and mercurial in their nature. But they're brilliant, and they exist within design because it's a really good framework to exist within. You know, but I think that we don't celebrate that enough. We don't celebrate the fact that some people who aren't, you know, great visual designers are fucking fantastic at understanding how flows and stuff works, and all this stuff's really important, and that we should be celebrating all of it rather than just giving people a pat on the back because they've done like a big global rebrand. I think it's all part of this, all wheels within wheels. In some ways, there ultimately, I think it's just better representation of people as well, actually being you know, seeing people out there who are similar to you gives you much more agency and much more in some ways permission to go and be there. I think that's important too.
Yeah, Katie's just asked a real interesting question. She's not worked in a studio since her degree, and even that was cut short because of COVID. How do you deal with isolation when you're working remotely, because she misses being around people and collaborating? Obviously, you both working for yourselves, one-man bands at the moment, so you must experience that. Is that a balance between, do you find that from a personal life perspective, you have to go out and meet people, you have to try and collaborate and partner with as many other creatives as possible? What do you reckon, James?
I think that this is a really interesting point that COVID caused. So obviously speaking from technically a privileged situation where I can now work on my own because I've had the experience, there's obviously a whole generation of new designers coming through who need to go and work with other people, need to be in an office environment, need to bounce off people and learn things, and just also be embedded in working alongside other people. And obviously now a lot of people are going back 4 days a week, 1 day at home, whatever that is. But if you're working on your own as a freelancer and you're starting out, I mean, it must be hard, really difficult. I can't really even start to imagine how difficult it'd be. I mean, a lot of the people I work with or collaborate with, I've never actually met them. I've never met them face to face. Sometimes I haven't even had a Zoom call with them or a hangout or anything. So I don't know. There's a bit of what am I trying to get at? I guess I don't necessarily see a lot of people.
Yeah, they're exactly the same. I'll some days I'll end up talking to myself quite a bit or arguing with the radio or whatever. You know, and sometimes I'll just message people. And I think some days, for mental health, I'm much more comfortable communicating online with people. So I actually quite like I like remote work some days because I don't really want to be out in the world. I feel much more comfortable with a layer of artifice between. Right, but there are some days when I've got a co-working space I go down to annoy the hell out of everyone I gather around, because I tap my feet and sing and everything else because I'm just not used. I think that's important. I think that I couldn't imagine being a junior. I think there's a really interesting toss at the moment. Is remote work good or is I think that from a mental health perspective, people working more by themselves is not good. I think it's been shown to be not good, and that's a societal wide thing, right? In an age when we've never needed mental health support more, we're slashing the budget on it. It's harder to get into it, and I think that working alone, working in a remote agency. Thank you for clarifying that, Katie. I think that a remote agencies are really good, but I think there's no substitute for getting to know someone. So I've always been a big believer in flying out to see people if they're abroad, because I want to see the physics. I want to just I want to take them for a beer. I want that better known people. And I think that being fully remote, I think can be a really interesting way of doing it. And like James is saying, I collaborate with loads of people that I haven't met. But I think that as a human, we're herding animals. Like we're naturally, you know, we are designed to kind of like, you know, we're better in groups. And I think that certainly from like if you're a junior designer and trying to learn stuff and ideate and stuff like that, then you need to be around other people seeing that. In my very personal view, I think that really helps your development. Like, there's nothing like, you know, just walking in a room and someone just picking up a post-it note or something else and going, oh, what about this? And suddenly it's like, you know, mind blown. That's it. We've cracked it. And you don't get that level of happenstance and magic remotely. But then, you know, you could argue you could do that via Miro or something else. I think that I think because a lot of remote stuff has been forced upon people as an industry, we were very against it. Like, people didn't want to do it for ages. And so the pandemic came along and people decided that it might work. We don't have any sort of like, no one's really cracked, as far as I've seen, no one's really cracked it. Like, what's the best way to do something? Is it better to be hybrid? Is it better to like offer this and everything else? I think what it does do, like being remote, obviously allows you to work anywhere, and that's a really, really exciting thing. Like, you know, can I, you know, and be able to be anywhere as well. Like, you know, you could, you know, do that kind of thing. But I think the isolation of it is a dangerous. Again, in my very personal opinion, if I spend too much time in my own head, that's not a great place to be. And I think that is one of the downsides of remote working, especially if you don't have a partner. I live alone, and it's kind of like, you know, it's kind of you lack that just a rationale of like, am I being too hard on myself? Am I overthinking this? Am I doing all those things? And I think that's a situation that could breed quite bad stuff. It won't necessarily happen, but I'm just saying from a sort of a brain side anyway.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good place to leave it, guys. It's been a very quick hour. I hope sort of laying your souls bare has not been too painful, and I think in the long term, when we build this series out and we sort of look back on, like I know me and you spoke, Gareth, about this, like inviting in charities and agency owners and people from all sorts of different perspectives to hear, you know, how we can do much better.
I think that's exactly it. I think you know, we tried, you know, we didn't want it to be a man-on. We, you know, put out, you know, unfortunately lost a couple of people, a couple of ladies who are going to do this work. I think that it's really important to, because like, as I said before, like I have you know, I've you know, had it all, lost it, all this kind of stuff, but so I have a bit more humility for it. But I think a lot of people don't really understand the struggle what it's like to be anyone but a white male to get into design, and the extra pressure that's on you like that. So I think it's really important to look at stuff from other people's learned experience and kind of like and try and change it for the better. I think that's you know, the one of the biggest things. I'd love something to come out of the pandemic was we just have seen, you know, we were nicer to everyone, and I think that understand the biggest step to kind of like having a better kind of like approach is understanding what it's like for other people and having empathy for them. We need to, so having this conversation will help with that.
Yeah, but what's also been really exciting and interesting for me is that even though it was around mental health, we sort of organically sort of pivoted and swerved into different directions, and it was more about just, you know, your thoughts and opinions and all different things about experiences, and not just that single topic, but it's driven by that topic. So that's, I think, from my perspective, it's just been really interesting to hear, you know, those real genuine sort of tales of what's been and gone. So I think it's a great place to leave it. This will be chopped up ever so slightly and then made available to anybody that wants to, you know, watch it back. Sometimes listening to it back 2 or 3 times, I find you find it and hear a lot more than what you do in the first instance. So please reach out if you want that. But I hope everybody has a great rest of the day and weekend ahead. And I'm sure we'll all catch up again soon, and you know, we'll announce a new date